Welcome back to this week's episode of Hormones, Metabolism, and You. I'm your host, Dr. Cassie Smith. I'm a functional endocrinologist based out of Oklahoma City. This week, we're going to focus again on gut health, but we're going to be talking about gut health in kids. I had Dr. Elisa Song on about 3 weeks ago, and you guys loved that episode. She wrote Healthy Kids, Happy Kids. And I know a lot of you that listen to this are parents or grandparents, and you want to know, what can I do for gut health for my children? And so that episode a couple weeks ago, if you did not listen to it, it should have been about 3 weeks ago now. Please go back and listen to that episode. It was wonderful with Dr. Elisa Song. But today, I also have Madeline Lauf. She is the founder and CEO of Begin Health, a company focused on children's digestive health through prebiotic supplements. I thought, like I said, it would be good to kind of focus on this because I have a lot of you reaching out to me and asking, can my kids take prebiotics? Can my kids take probiotics? What can I do to help the microbiome of my children? Why are my children's microbiome not, normal? Why do my kids have symptoms of leaky guts? Things like that. And so if you have kids, if you are a parent, if you have questions about kids' microbiome, this is the episode for you. Also, if you are a parent or you know someone who has children who are struggling with skin issues, with digestive issues, with learning issues, with behavior issues, this can all be a sign that they have gut issues. So Madeline grew up in rural Illinois. She developed a passion and interest in children's health after witnessing the widespread consumption of processed foods and its impact on youth wellness. Before founding Begin Health, Madeline built her career in the tech industry, starting in finance before transitioning to marketing roles at various tech companies. Her entrepreneurial journey began with an ambitious plan to create a healthier infant formula for the Asian market, inspired by her time living in Asia, where she observed high demand for American formula products. After facing regulatory challenges in the formula industry, she pivoted to developing a specialized children's milk product. Through its venture, Madeline discovered an underserved market, parents struggling with children's constipation issues. This led to the creation of Begin Health's Growing Up Prebiotic, which launched in 2022. There's some more information here about why you did this and regulatory challenges in the formula industry and things like that. But before we get into that, I want you to kind of explain to people, I think it's important for listeners, explain to them how you got here, like why you do this, why this is so important, just in general, and just maybe some like basic things about gut health. And then you can kind of explain to them too about, I think this is important for people to understand, the formula industry is a big market. And I don't know that it's always the best market for our kids, right? Because what we're giving kids at a really early age is very important for their microbiome. So I want you to kind of talk on that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to chat about kids' health and the infant formula and our gut health. I am from rural Illinois. I grew up surrounded by cornfields, and it's just devastating as you grow up and you look around and people around you are not well. Leaving the Midwest, you do see that other habits that people have are a bit healthier, better nutrition and diets. And it just got me really upset about the situation when you're in the Midwest or just rural America and you just see everyone around you is overweight, has chronic illnesses, has mental illnesses, they suffer from obesity, etc. And you're like, there has to be a better way. And personally, this impacted me because I was suffering from digestive health issues for a really long time. And I was put on prescription medication when I was 25 years old. And thankfully, I knew enough to advocate for myself to say, hey, look, there has to be another way. Let me look into that. And the doctors were like, oh, well, I guess you could try lifestyle interventions. I was like, yeah, let's try it. And it turned out it worked. And that was a really eye-opening experience for me because I started going down this rabbit hole of healing myself from the inside out using lifestyle modifications. And I found the power of gut health and gut healing and how the nutrition and our diet can truly impact our overall health. And so for me, when learning upon this whole idea of gut health and gut healing, I realized that actually the greatest opportunity for impact is at the earliest of ages. And that was really what inspired me to start a kids and gut microbiome health company, because if we can help kids establish and maintain or repair their gut microbiome from a very early age, that will set them up for lifelong health. And so I became super passionate about that. And I said, you know what? Why don't we start with the first food? Our first food is infant formula. And if you look at the label of the infant formulas, you will be appalled by what is in them. But that is what makes infant formula formula. Is it's called formula for a reason. There's a formula that you basically have to follow. And there's very little room for innovation because that is the standard that is set by the FDA. And so I set out to build at least a cleaner baby formula. But unfortunately, it was just a very, very expensive category to be in. You have to have a lot of money to build big facilities. And so that is ultimately when we decided to pivot to what it is our current day product, which is growing up prebiotics.
Okay. So yeah, I tell people all the time I'm huge on ingredient lists and like non-processed foods. I don't think you should eat anything with more than 5 ingredients if it comes from a package. That's just my personal preference. I make a lot of stuff at my house that has more than 5 ingredients, but they're individual ingredients. I know what they are. And so I'm very passionate about like the food that goes in my body doesn't have more than 5 ingredients. And ideally, none of those contain any form of sugar. I've never thought about looking at baby formula, but tell us in general, what do you see if you look at a baby formula like ingredient list? Like what is in there?
Yeah, so typically, a baby formula will have all the major food groups, if you will, but the fats are really the part that are really suspect, right? There's usually soy oil, canola oil, what have you. And some of those are what really, like, there could be alternative opportunities for. The challenge is that you just can't, you do have to get the full amino acid profile. And sometimes like that is the only way that you can get it is from a mixture of some of these oils. And so the goal is hopefully a lot of baby formula companies, if they're able to pull more fat from the animal and put that in the formula, that would be a goal. But truly, like there really is to this day, not really an opportunity to innovate there. You just can use cleaner ingredients, but based on the current FDA regulations, you still have to abide basically by this one specific formulation. I'll give one more example. A lot of these formulas will have corn syrup solids, for example, that could be an alternative for like lactose. So if you are looking for a cleaner baby formula, go for the formula that has lactose in it versus corn syrup solids. Small little substitutes like that, look for a coconut oil over a soybean oil. That's a positive. Look for a whole milk formula over a skim milk formula. So those are small, ingredient changes that if you're a parent looking for formula, can help you at least choose a better formula over some of the others.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out here too, like, why does this even matter? And so the reason I thought this would be a good fit for our podcast guest is because this all matters because of the microbiome, right? So the gut microbiome. And I think, you kind of hit the nail on the head when we were talking about in babies and in kids, like you have to make sure that we are supporting the environment of their gut and we're giving them the things that they need so that they have good microbiome and good diversity of microbiome that are being developed. I think that part of the problem in this country today with childhood obesity and these kids needing liver transplants and just all these crazy things in kids is that they start with a poor microbiome, which I want to talk to you about. How much of your microbiome is predetermined before you even come into this world. But then once they get here, they get no help in supporting that microbiome or diversifying that microbiome or making it better. And so I want you to kind of talk about that in general. What is, why is it important to diversify and have a healthy microbiome in kids? And how do we do that?
Yeah, so having a healthy microbiome starts at the beginning, just how the method that the baby is born, right? There's a vaginal birth versus C-section. And that right there can already start to determine the makeup of the baby's gut microbiome, because it's the first bacteria that the baby starts to be in contact with. And so if you're a baby that's coming through the vaginal canal, you will be coated, and we call it seeding of the vaginal cavity will seed the baby with these good positive gut microbes. If you're in a C-section birth, that a lot of times those babies from the studies are showing that they tend to have more of the microbiome composition that is more similar to the hospital environment, which can be more pathogenic, which is why C-section babies, which by the way, C-section births are on the rise. Over a third of babies are born are C-section birth. And you know what? It can be life-saving. And so there's a role for C-section births, but if your baby is C-section, it will hopefully, you can start to look into more ways to support their little gut microbiome, as it might need more support. So the second piece there is then the method of feeding, if it's breastfeeding versus infant formula. And as we talked about earlier with the infant formulas, that is why I'm a huge proponent of this thing called human milk oligosaccharides. They're the third most abundant component of human breast milk. And these are the prebiotics found in human breast milk. There are over 100 of them. They are now able to be recreated through a process called fermentation. These prebiotics feed the beneficial bacteria in the baby's gut. And the studies demonstrate that the babies that are fed the HMOs in the infant formulas have stools that are closer to that of breastfed infants. So that is a huge breakthrough for infant formulas. And if you are selecting infant formula, definitely look out for the HMOs if you can. This starts to kind of lead into the time when kids do transition off of formula or even solids. When you start introducing more foods, this can be a tricky time, because now your kiddo is starting to come interact with foods that they never experienced before, right? And that is when you start getting the constipations or colicky babies. And that's a time when you can start to really establish your good positive gut microbes. So, there's a lot of different points to develop the gut microbiome. What we're learning more and more is that the gut microbiome is essentially very malleable at the early ages. So if you make small changes to promote the growth of the good gut bugs, the baby's gut will actually start to transform in as little as like 3, 4, 5 weeks, which is very different from the adult gut microbiome that will take a lot longer. So that is why it's so important to, as a parent, to really be in tune with your baby's gut. How do the stools look? How are they feeling after eating, to start to really, build and establish that strong, healthy gut for life.
So when you say prebiotics, what do you mean for people that are listening? Do you mean like the type of food that they're eating? Do you mean something that you're giving them? Like, explain to listeners what a prebiotic is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people are probably in tune with the probiotics. Probiotics are the living bacteria within us. The prebiotics are the food. So they're non-digestible fibers that the living probiotics actually feed on. And so we really want to nurture and feed our good gut bugs, and we can do that by feeding them prebiotics. Prebiotics are found in a lot of really great food sources, and at Begin Health, we are the #1 proponent of getting your nutrition from food. We really stress the importance of clean nutrients that are going directly in us, that, we really shouldn't have to rely on supplementation, right? If we can get our nutrients from food, that is in the top priority. However, a lot of times, especially with kids, you are not able to get your kiddos to eat all the fruits and veggies out there. And so that's when we specifically created Growing Up Prebiotics, which are a tasteless and textureless prebiotic supplement that's composed of the human milk oligosaccharide that is found in breast milk and chicory root fiber. And so these are 2 ingredients that have been very well studied And they are the ones that feed the good gut bugs, help with softer stooling, and really help support kiddos who may not be getting their nutrients fully from food, to help them establish and build their good gut bugs at that early age.
So this prebiotic that you've made is more to help kids maintain or to help them develop, I guess, a good, healthy, diverse gut microbiome. Is that correct?
Yeah,
The
that's right. Yeah, so this is the challenge, is that all of us, even as adults, even when we're eating as much as the good foods, it's still, we do not consume enough fiber in our diets, just period. Like 95% of us are not getting enough of it. Our gut bugs are starving, essentially. They're hungry. They want to be eating these prebiotics, but if we are not feeding them, that is when it starts to cause the challenges. That is when your gut microbiome lining will start to essentially fray. And that is when you start getting leaky gut. You start having other issues that come from that. And so you want to support your good gut bugs. If you don't support your good gut bugs, the bad gut bugs, the ones that are related to other health issues, will start to take over. And that is something we call dysbiosis. So it is not balanced. And so by feeding the good gut bugs, the ones that are responsible for so many different processes from digestion to immunity, we want to feed them so that they are the ones that are primarily, taking up the gut microbiome. And so for us at Begin Health, we of course we support getting your nutrition from the food, but if you are not able to, this is a really great way to support that. And again, it is establishing that early gut microbiome from the beginning.
So this prebiotic that you have, is this like a chewable something? Is this like a powder? What is this?
Yeah, it's a powdered supplement. It's tasteless and textureless. You can put it in water, milk, yogurt. You can bake with it. And it really just helps a lot of the kiddos that are struggling. Specifically, we found a really important use case in the kiddos that are transitioning off of long-term laxative use. And what we find is that it really does help with softer stooling, more comfortable stooling, and so many kiddos are struggling to poop. They are constipated. There's so many different signs that your kiddo might be constipated and you may not even know it. So we always recommend to parents to really make sure that they are studying their kids' stool off the Bristol, comparing it to the Bristol stool chart, which is a really nice chart to evaluate, because the stool is a daily biomarker that we can see essentially, hopefully every single day. And it tells you, a report card of how your kiddo is doing with their digestive health. And actually, even for adults, we can use this. And if your stool is harder, more pebble-like, what have you, like maybe it's time to add more hydration, maybe it's time to add a little bit more fiber. If you're also on the other end, you might have more diarrhea. You could have a bacterial issue, etc. And so all of this really goes to supporting those good gut bugs to help balance and restore the gut microbiome.
If somebody listening to this is thinking maybe this is something good for my kid, but they have celiac, they have lactose intolerance, they can't, deal with dairy, is any of that going to be a problem with this?
Yeah, we get this question often because, of course, we have human milk oligosaccharide. First of all, it does not come from human milk. So I want to clarify that. It is something that is made we can now make it using a process called fermentation. So that is all really cool. It also, even though we do mention it may contain traces of milk, the starting ingredient is lactose, and that is eaten up in the fermentation process. So we call it invisibly small traces amounts of lactose, and certainly there shouldn't be any cow milk protein. So we've very successfully had kiddos that are allergic to milk or lactose or cow milk protein using growing up prebiotics. So that is not a challenge. We've had kids with celiac. Also, there's just so many applications for this product that kiddos that are struggling with other health challenges. Of course, always we recommend clearing it with your specific healthcare practitioner, just to make sure that, that this is something that they are aware of. But typically, there really is not an issue with those kiddos.
Is this something that adults can take too?
Absolutely. I take a growing of prebiotics every day in my morning coffee. And, we just up the dose essentially. So you take a little bit more than the kiddo dose level, but it works just as well. So we highly recommend it for parents too that may also be experiencing some digestive health issues.
So that's what I wanted to kind of transition and talk to you about too, is addressing kind of these parental pain points with kids, like where parents are saying, I'm having these issues with my kids. I want to talk to you about some of the common issues that parents struggle with kids. And then I want to kind of transition to the role of gut health and like the overall well-being of a child, because what I want people to understand is that a lot of, and this is in adults too, if you're somebody who's struggling with digestion issues, so kid or adult, diarrhea, constipation, especially when you're not pooping every day. It is so vital I mean, this is how we relieve toxins in our body. If you're somebody who's struggling with immune system issues, you're sick all the time, you have weird skin reactions, eczema, things like that, or you've got a lot of behavioral or mental disturbances. So in kids, that looks like learning disabilities, that looks like autism, that looks like they're in trouble all the time at school. In adults, that looks like brain fog, inability to concentrate, maybe even ADHD. I want us to put the puzzle pieces together for people and help them realize that most of this goes back to your gut, correct?
Yes, for sure. No, I think we call it the command center of the growing little body. And a lot of parents, like, there's so many signs, but a lot of times, doctors will be kind of quick. They don't have a ton of time with families. And so they're quick to, rightfully or wrongfully, get you on a medical path, prescription medication for something. Oh, you have constipation, here's a laxative. Oh, you have trouble learning at school, here's a, prescription medication for ADHD. And then they really don't have the time to sit there and really educate the families on, like, let's go through, your food log or your stooling patterns, trying to understand more of a holistic profile of that family and child. A lot of times, specifically when it comes to digestive health, the couple warning signs that we share with parents or that we commonly see are specifically, one is just, let's just start with the basics of what are the stooling patterns. Is it a daily bowel movement? Is it every 3 days? Some kiddos are 7 days. We've seen some really drastic cases. At that point, like, we definitely recommend, please, go see a doctor or a physician, because that really, it can become a really bad issue fast. When it comes to stooling patterns, even if your kiddo is going daily, your kiddo could still be carrying what we call a large fecal load. And this, sometimes we see parents are like, well, my kid's not constipated, they're going daily. And if they go get an x-ray, they realize that their kiddo is actually fully backed up, right? And so one of the signs that we can start to see is if your kiddo is having skid marks or any kind of accidents, that could potentially be something that your kid is constipated. We see a lot of withholding behaviors. That's a lot of times that's because the kiddo has had some kind of traumatic event around pooping. They may have just had something that was painful. They might have, just experienced something that was uncomfortable. They're smart. They don't want to do the thing that hurts. And so they will start withholding. That creates a downward spiral, because now they're withholding. Now they're getting more irritable. They're experiencing more constipation, more inflammation, and then their stool gets harder. So then it's even more painful. So that is something you definitely want to avoid. A lot of times we see families that have had consistent UTIs. UTIs are really a challenge with the kids that are constipated. And then also bedwetting. That's another sign that your kiddo, there might be some pressure on the bladder. So those are just some issues that could be stemming from it. When it comes to attention and behavior and just being generally irritable, a lot of times those kiddos can be constipated. They're just in a constant state of irritability and discomfort. And that can lead to just general attention issues, behavioral issues, emotional issues. So, all of these things really can stem from the overall digestive health status of the kiddo. So we do recommend, being in tune with your little one if they are seemingly backed up, finding ways to do a clean out, per your pediatrician, or working with different, there's a lot of natural ways that we like to encourage parents to clean their kiddo out, make sure that everything is kind of out, and then find a really nice routine thing that you can do with your family so that your kiddo will hopefully stay consistent and not get backed up again. So those are some of the watch outs for families if they think their kid might be struggling.
Yeah. And again, to the point of like skin issues as well, I think that's something that's overmissed in kids a lot. Like when they do have eczema or rashes, things like that, a lot of times it gets blamed on they got into something or maybe they're eating something, but nobody really addresses that long term, right? So that's something that I think definitely gets missed in adults and in kids. And to your point, the laxatives, like nobody should have to take laxatives every day to go to the bathroom. Every now and then you may have an issue, right? Like you had pain medication or something like that. But, and if you're having to constantly take a laxative or give a child a laxative because they're not having consistent bowel movements, then there's a big problem there that we need to be addressing in lots of different ways. Not only the food they're eating, but their stress and their sleep and their, hormone levels, maybe not in children, but definitely if you're talking about kids, stress, sleep, and the food that they're eating. And so I think those are all very important things that we need to think about. Tell me about the link between like digestive health and behavior in kids, like what you guys have seen as far as
Yeah.
like
So
behavior
we're learning.
issues, ADHD, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, we're learning more and more about the brain gut connection, right? And so, what we're seeing is that the kiddos that really do have a dysbiosis or some kind of issue in their digestive health, it can be manifesting in behavioral issues just because they're essentially in like this fight or flight mode. And it can contribute also back to digestive health issues. So if you're constantly stressed out, that could actually be killing or the good gut microbes, right? Because they're just in this state of stress. And so it really is this balance that they contribute to one another. And what we found is when you do support or remove the bad things that are causing the issues in the gut or in the stress world, then you can start to see more of that relaxation and those behavioral issues start to subside. So with us at Begin Health, when we've seen some of these kiddos that are super irritable, we have absolutely noticed with families that they tell us specifically that their kiddo is able to sleep better now because they're not going to bed uncomfortable, right? So that is a positive. They are generally able to focus more. So those are all things that we hear anecdotally from families that have invested in these gut microbiome different investments. And so, and I want to address Cassie back to the point of the skin health is like their little bodies are essentially telling us that there is something that is wrong. It doesn't always have to specifically be related to nutrition, though I'm a proponent that nutrition, solves 90% of these cases. But for families that are just they know their kiddo better than anybody in the world. They know that something is off, but they don't know what it is. Their doctor is not able to pinpoint it. For those families, I just always recommend you have to audit almost every single part of your child's life. Starting with even the fabrics that their clothes are made of. What are the cleaning products you use at home? Is there mold or are they, in a rooms that in their schools that could be causing issues with asthma or what have you. What are the foods that they're eating, processed foods, when they're outside the home versus inside the home? There's just so many different, I guess, toxins, and that the toxic overload can really just impact their overall health. So we really recommend, just from bottoms up, you have to evaluate all of it to really get to the bottom of what could be the issue.
Yeah, these are all points that I make with my adult patients too, right? Like, so that's what
Yeah.
we do at Modern Endocrine. We really look at everything. And I think that this is so important. And I wanted to bring this up because I do think that gut health is one of the things that is definitely overlooked. People don't understand it. They don't understand, why it's important. They don't understand how, their gut and their microbiome plays into the role of other things, your hormones, your attention, your sleep, your mood. And it does. It plays into role of with everything. And like I was telling you, I have a book that's going to be coming out this year, and the entire book is just on gut health. And it's on, how does our gut get here? Why is it not functioning right? How do we fix it? When our gut isn't working right, what are the symptoms that it causes? And I think in kids, this is a huge thing, because what I hate and what I see all the time is all these kids on, it's bad enough that we have adults that take, over 75% of the adult population takes more than 3 medications, which is alarming. But now this is like moving into kids, right? So you have all these kids on all these medications, and many times it's to mask symptoms that our body is telling us by, a skin issue or a GI issue or a behavior issue, something is wrong. And it goes back to environmental things, right? Food and nutrition and sleep and things like that. And so it's just really important for people to understand that. And I'm not in the kid space very often, but this is a great point with, kids are more unfortunate than adults in the fact that they can't even really stand up for themselves, right? Like they can maybe tell you my stomach hurts, or they can, like you said, like try not to go to the bathroom, hold it in because it hurts. Like they're smart enough to know how to do things that doesn't hurt them, but they're not at the intellectual age yet or capacity to be able to explain to someone like, hey, I don't feel good. And so you have to, as the parent, as the doctor, as the person in charge of that human, be, taking that responsibility upon yourself and looking at them and doing all these things. And so it can just be more difficult, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was the reason why I was motivated to begin health, was because kids do not have the agency to say, nope, mom, I'm not taking red dye 40, right? Now, as an adult, I sometimes battle with my own parents to say, no, you're not taking this. But as kids, they really do not have that agency, that they cannot advocate for themselves. And it is so hard to be a modern parent. And I'm not yet one of them, but just living is hard, right? Everything around us is laced with different things that we really don't want to have in our bodies, but we've traded these bad ingredients for convenience because it's easier to grab a salad dressing with, 10,000 ingredients in it than it is to make it at home, right? And so I do realize how hard it is on the modern parent. Everyone's just trying to get by, and I really feel and empathize with that parent. And so at Begin Health, we really have a no compromise policy. And it makes it actually really hard to build clean nutrition based products, because it's a lot easier to build products that have bad ingredients in them, frankly. They have longer shelf lives. They are more appealing to the consumer. It's a lot more fun when you have a product that is sparkly red because it has a food dye in it than when it's made with fruit powders, right? So at Begin Health, we are so just focused on how can we create nutritional products that we can stand by. When you create a kid's brand, as parents, we always recommend, like, make sure you know everything that company is doing. And it's really incumbent on companies to be more friendly to consumers by doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And we really recommend to parents too, like, demand more of these companies. tell them how you feel and vote with your dollars.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's very difficult. And so it is very important that as a parent, you pay attention to this. And then also as a parent, and I'm going to go back to a lot of my listeners, it's so important that you model behavior for your children, because I think what people forget in this crazy world is that kids are like sponges. You may know it, but I mean, they really are. Kids are looking to their parents for everything. So you need to be modeling the behavior of movement, of exercise, of eating well, of being happy, of practicing gratitude, like all of these things, right? Of paying attention and listening to yourself. And so it is so difficult to be a parent, but just think about all the things that I've taught you on this podcast up to this point. If you've listened to all, 50 plus episodes, these are things that are also going on in the little body of the humans that are your children. And it actually starts there. And so it's really, really, really important to focus on this. And that's why I think it's important, to have you on and to let people hear this. I have, I think, 2 chapters of my book that are coming out. So 20% of my book just talks about your microbiome before the age of like 2 and all the reasons why people's microbiomes are all messed up by the time they're older. And it's because we don't focus enough at the beginning of our life on this diversity and just making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do so that our gut microbiome fixes itself. And to your point, like, if it's not where it needs to be in a kid, it's a lot easier to fix, right? When we've only had 2 years worth of damage or 4 years worth of damage as opposed to 40 years worth of damage. So, and I also think maybe you can talk to this, but I also truly believe, like, so I take care of a lot of diabetics. I did. With diabetes, it has been shown in research that the longer you have diabetes and the longer you have uncontrolled blood sugar and the longer you have issues with it, the harder it is for your body in general, even your cells, your cell membrane, your mitochondria, to come back and like fix that disease process, right? It's like they get used to living with that. It's kind of the same with your gut. If you have a kid who has been sick, their whole life, or they've got this dysbiosis or this leaky gut, like you're talking about, and they've had it since they were 2, and now they're 35 and we're trying to fix it. It is a huge undertaking because I do it every day. Every single day I do gut health stuff. And when you have, I mean, the older people are, the harder it is because it's like their body's gotten used to that and it's just like it fights back. And so I'm all about preventative medicine. That's what functional medicine is about. And so I think if you can start this in a kid, that's amazing, right?
Absolutely. And you bring up such a great point. The role of personal responsibility in our health is so important. And we run a really large online community for support for constipation with kids. It's peer to peer where parents just talk to each other. And we really notice it's like their doctors aren't listening to them. They want solutions, but their doctors are not giving them the sufficient information for them to take matters into their own hands. And so that is why, this is so important, and podcasts like yours, where parents can find other information to help them take matters into their own hands. Parents do have that power, and we see it every single day. Parents advocating for their kiddos. They know that there's a better way. And to your point, they have to be role models themselves, eating well, physical activity, modeling that behavior is so, so important. And it is not okay that we have soaring rates of diabetes in kids. Like, that's just not okay, right? It doesn't have to be this way. And if we can prevent it by building and establishing that gut microbiome from the earliest of ages, which we know now is like up to age 8 is really that time, you will, as a kiddo, you might start to experience other issues, health issues along your life. Antibiotics might be one of them, surgeries, what have you, but you will always essentially bounce back to what we call the gut print. That gut print is what you want to build and invest in early, because your body will ultimately start to bounce back to that gut print. If you never built it to begin with, as you were mentioning, it's a lot harder to go back to that because your natural state is really not a very balanced gut microbiome.
I like that. Building a solid gut print. Love it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I like it. So yeah, and I do agree. Like, if you're a parent, this is something like, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, but this is kind of your role as the parent to help this little human develop into the best, person that they can be. And so it is hard work, but I think the education is so important. And you brought up another
Yeah.
thing about, the constipation. So I tell adults this, but like, treating constipation with laxatives, that is not the answer. That is not the answer long term. And because they're bad side effects of laxatives long term, right? And your gut almost gets lazy. And then that's a whole nother issue that we have to address. And so, again, going back to like, why we need to be asking why. If we're not having bowel movements every day, why not? If we're having these symptoms, if we're having all of a sudden behavioral issues, why are we having behavioral issues? And I think sometimes, and I don't mean this to be like derogatory at all, but I think sometimes parents are almost like, they feel bad, or they like blame themselves, or they're like, if their kid has an issue, like they're developing a behavior issue, or they're developing ADHD, or they're developing constipation, it's almost like the parent sometimes doesn't want to say anything, or sometimes is even like scared, or just feels bad about taking their child in because they feel like, well, maybe it's their fault. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I don't think it's ever a parent's fault. I think it's a lack of education. It's that we live in a society that makes it very difficult to be healthy. We live in a society that's unconducive to health. We have infant formula that has corn syrup in it. I didn't even know that. That's alarming. And so there's just all these things that kind of just get thrown into the mix, right? And so then it's like this balance of like, do we have more good things, and are we able to detox versus the bad things? And when you start having GI issues, the problem with that is we detoxify through our skin and our gut. And so when we're not having regular bowel movements, that detoxification process is not working. And so then these little tiny things that we get from living, right? Like, everyone gets them. Like, I detox once a month because I live. Those things build up, and especially in kids, because they're so much littler, right? Like, they don't have the ability to accept all of that and detox as well as we do when we're older. So
That's absolutely true. And I think there's a positive thing happening here, this whole concept of root cause health and getting to the root cause of these health challenges. I think that in general, the modern American parent is starting to be more educated. And I think that is wonderful. More and more families do know that it doesn't have to be this way. They might still be struggling to make those changes. And of course, those changes are hard, right? But, like, it includes, maybe you need to eat more meals at home versus eating them out. Like, small little changes like that can have an enormously large impact on the overall health of a family. And the positive is that from a national perspective, the conversation does seem like it has shifted, which, I'm very optimistic about, because people are realizing that it doesn't have to be this way. And now we're seeing companies where, I mean, I'm so excited about Shake Shack moving to beef tallow, for example, for their fryers, right? Like, I'm seeing it more and more, these restaurants that are like, hey, this is safe on our menu, etc. So there is a very positive momentum in this country that gives me a lot of hope that even if you're more aware, you can make better choices. Previously, we were not even aware, so we couldn't even make those choices, right? So I'm really excited about that.
yeah, me too. And I do think that people are sort of taking back their health, and it is difficult. I'm not going to say it's not. I get it. You've got, parents with 3 kids going to 3 different activities after school, running here and there. You don't get home till 8 o'clock, but like, you have to make a choice from a health perspective. Like, you know, uh, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to continue to take and eat the fast food and the stuff that is convenient at the risk of the health of our children, or are we not? And, as a parent, some people don't like to hear this, but as a parent, it is your responsibility to take care of that child. And it is your responsibility to make decisions for them if they are not making intelligent decisions, because you, as the parent, are financially supporting them, emotionally supporting them. So it is your right. That's how I feel about it, right? Like, whenever I was a teenager, I remember getting really mad at my my parents when they would have opinions about my food or, what I was doing with my time after school or whether I was studying, whether I wasn't. And I would become very angry. And my dad used to say to me, well, Cassie, you can get as angry as you want, but I have the right to have this conversation with you. And I have the right to have a large, impact in the decision that you're making because I financially support you. And that's true, right? Like he used to tell me all the
Yeah.
time, when you financially support yourself, you can do whatever the hell you want. But while I'm financially supporting you, this is how it's going to go. And I think that sometimes as parents, you just have to, it's hard because it's not your role as a parent to be someone's friend. It is your role as a parent to make sure that you are creating this human that is going to be a functional part of society and be a good person. And so sometimes that is difficult, especially as kids get older. But I think that as a parent, you really have to make that decision of, yes, we are going to eat more meals at home. Yes, you are going to eat your vegetables. I understand that you may not like the taste of them. So we're going to try to make them in another way that you like the taste of them. And you're just not going to eat that processed crap. I don't care that your friends eat it. I don't care that that's what's on TV. We're just not going to do it in this house. Again, when you're 25 or you're 21 or you're however old that you are and you can financially support yourself, great. But while you're living here and we're eating here, this is what we're going to do. And it's just something that as a parent, that's, in my opinion, part of your job as a parent, right?
Yeah. And on top of that, I fully agree with that. And I firmly believe like the two greatest investments that we can have for our families and your little ones is their health. Their health, because that is going to live with them for forever. That is a massive investment. My second one is love. So health and love are the greater investments, even above financial, in my opinion. And even though, of course, they're all important. But if you can invest in their health, that will allow them to really lead lifelong, positive lives.
No, I completely agree. Okay, so I appreciate you kind of walking us through all of these things about, the science of gut health and how, some of these pain points that patients have with or parents have with their kids, some of the things they can do about that, and just kind of talking about gut health with behavior, all these things. I think this is all very beneficial. We will definitely link all of your stuff, the prebiotics, everything in the show notes. Social media wise, do you guys have social media? Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah. So you can find us. We're on Instagram. We're also on TikTok at begin.health. And our website is beginhealth.com. So come check us out. We're always excited to chat with families about any of their gut health positive routines or even help you audit your labels. We're here for it.
Awesome. So I have 3 questions I end every podcast with. So I want to ask them to you, and you could even tailor them maybe towards children if you want, but don't overthink them. What is one food that is most beneficial and why?
Ooh, I love kefir. So kefir is fermented yogurt, right? And it has so many positive gut microbiome properties. I even dabble in the raw kefir, but I am a huge proponent of kefir, something that you take every single day that supports the development of your good gut bugs.
How do you do you just drink it? Do you mix it with something? How do you do
Just
kefir?
I'll drink a whole cup or even a little shot before bed.
Okay.
Love
So
kefir.
I personally have to mix it with something. So I usually put it with some Greek yogurt or maybe some like berries, nuts, or put it in a smoothie. That's easy too. But yeah, I agree. I love kefir as well. What is one thing that anyone can do that's 100% free but beneficial for their health? So maybe what is something that a parent could do with a child or for a child or do with a child that would improve their health but is 100% free?
Get outside and get some sun. I am a huge proponent of the sun and vitamin D. Vitamin D, we know, is so helpful to us, but I'm not even that big of a proponent of taking vitamin D, but getting it from the sun, we can do every single day if we can.
Yeah, I agree. We have this whole generation of kids who are just so like sedentary and want to stay inside on video games and computers and things like that. And I mean, my best memories as a kid was being outside, on my go-kart, on my
Yeah.
four-wheeler, in the pond, playing. Like we never really got to stay inside. So I would agree with that. The last
Getting
question.
outside. I think school should even be outside.
Yeah,
I'm crazy about it.
There's actually a school in Oklahoma City that is on a farm. And it's for little kids, and they like literally go to this farm to school where they go outside and like pick up chicken eggs, and that's how they learn to count. And then they go into the kitchen and like prepare their food, and that's how they learn to like do math. And it is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool concept. So I would agree. I think that school outside is a great idea. Yeah. Last question is, if there's one thing that you wish you would have known about your health, let's say 10 years ago, because you're pretty young, what is one thing you wish you would have known about your health 10 years ago that you would have done differently if you knew that now?
I would have been so much more critical of fast food and seed oils. I grew up, I worked really hard when I was a teenager, and I would get fast food as a teenager. And I think that I just didn't even know about seed oils in general. And so I mean, I'm so to the point now where it's like, if it even has a seed oil in it, like I'm just abstaining from it. And I wish I really would have known that a long time ago. So
I
you live and learn.
Yep. Taco Bell was like my jam. I used to eat there every day. Ugh.
Well, back in the day, Taco Bell was coconut oil, was their oil for a really long time. And they did make the switch, but it was actually one of the healthier options. I want to say, into the 90s, but.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm talking about definitely in the 2000s and maybe college time. I definitely ate my fair share of bean burritos, unfortunately, but join us next week for the next episode. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hormones, Metabolism, and You. If you listen to this and you know anyone who is a parent, please, please, please share this with them. I know parents are asking all the time, what can I do to make my kids' guts healthier? What can I do as far as probiotics, prebiotics? If you know anyone who has a kid struggling with skin issues, with behavioral issues, with gut issues, please make sure that you share this podcast with them. Make sure that you're following us on any platform that you get podcasts, whether it be Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. We're on all of them. You want to make sure that you get every episode that drops. So please follow us and leave me a review. That's how I know that I'm doing something that you guys enjoy. And that's what keeps us making more of these podcasts. Lastly, make sure that you're following us on social media. I'm dropping lots of good information on social media. I have a course coming, an app that's about to launch as well, and it's all about gut health. And finally, Modern Endocrine is available in 39 states now. We are working towards 50, but currently 39. A whole list of those states can be found on our website, and we see people virtually. So if you'd like to become a patient and let us help you with your gut health, hormones, thyroid, weight loss journey, whatever it is that we can help you with, we would be happy to do that. Join us next week on the next episode of Hormones, Metabolism, and You. Have a great week. The information presented, including any materials discussed, referenced, or linked within this podcast, are for general educational purposes only, not the practice of medicine. No doctor-patient relationship is formed from you listening to this podcast or utilizing any of the information provided. I am a doctor, but I am not talking to you as your doctor. The information provided is not intended to diagnose or treat health problems, or take the place of the professional medical care provided by your doctor. If you are experiencing any health problems, including problems you believe have been touched upon in any respect within this podcast, you should consult your doctor about the problems without delay. You may ask your doctor whether he or she believes the information I have provided would be helpful to you, but you should still consult your doctor immediately and follow his or her medical advice as your treating physician. I'm just here to provide you basic knowledge about the issues we discuss so you are more aware of them and can better discuss them with your doctor. That's why we call it Back to the Basics. Join me on the next episode as we continue our journey.